This section will talk about setting up a multiple color job with a Riley Hopkins press using the joystick registration. This job is going to be a white underbase on a black garment with a red and then a black text. So it's a 3-color job. This is a spot color job, so no halftones. We are going to be using center crop marks in our image, and we do have unique registration marks along the side. Now for this registration, we're going to be showing a little bit different type of registration. We're going to register to the film. Now when you register to your film, you want to print or you want to register to the most encompassing or the trapping layer of film. You don't want to take, in this image's instance, the smaller part of the image or the image that is less encompassing. Let's say the text. This image is much easier to register than the outline red. The outline red encompasses both the white and the text, so that's why we're going to choose this plate to register to. First thing we need to do is pick a clean palette to register. So we put brand new palette tape on this palette, and we need to draw a center line down the center of the palette. Once we got our palette centered, we next align our film to the center line and where we want our image to fall onto the t-shirt. Now keep in mind that most shirts, when you print them, are 3 fingers down from the neckline. So let's say our neckline's right about here somewhere on the palette. We want the image to start up at the top here. One of the other reasons why we use one of the encompassing trap layers, 3 inches down. So if our neckline was right here, the image would start there, and we'd be squared away, ready to go. Now we have center crop marks in our image, so aligning the image to the center line of the palette simply and easily aligns our image. We don't have to get the T-square out anymore. You can either use a little bit of tack adhesive to hold the transparency down, but that kind of ruins the transparency, so we're going to use just a little bit of screen tape to hold the edge of the transparency down so it doesn't move during registration. Next, let's take our first screen and register that up. Now the first and easiest screen to register is obviously going to be the screen that matches exactly to the plate. Now with this print, we're going to be printing white and then black and then red. So we're going to register our red screen in the last position. Let's bring the head down. Now you need to make sure that your joysticks are centered. Right now the joystick is facing to the back, so we want to center that out to give us the most room to play with once we actually start and micro in the press. Now as you notice, this palette's a little high compared to where we placed our image. We got 2 options. We can either raise the screen up and then lower the whole film, which would then lower the neckline of the image, or we can just take the palette and move it back slightly so that our image comes close to alignment. That one's probably a little bit too far back. Let's move it a little forward. Pop your screen down, and if it comes close, you're probably good to go. When I mean comes close to alignment, you don't have to line up exactly because that's what we're going to use the joystick registration for, but it needs to be close so then we can micro it in with the joystick. Next thing you want to do is you want to set your off contact, and you want to set your off contact tab at the edge of the screen right here. Keep in mind with the joystick registration, you need to have a flat level playing field, otherwise your joystick will not move freely. If you look at the screen right here, it's not flat. The screen starts out low and then comes up very tilted at an angle. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower the off contact of this screen, lower the tilt, and then lower the off contact. We'll lower all the bolts up. Remember, the easiest way to do this so we get it leveled instantly is using an off contact plate like that and then tightening everything back down and then inserting our off contact tab. Make sure it's level and flat. Once our plate is set up, we will now insert our off contact tab. We want to make sure that our off contact tab touches the frame and then comes down and touches the neck portion or the top of the platen. It works much better if it does it this way rather than having it on the mesh touching the platen, because the frame is much more rigid. So washer or quarter works great for that. Next we check for off contact. Once we have proper off contact, it's time to micro the press in. When you use the joystick, you want to use one hand back at the joystick and then one hand at the top of the frame to actually help your hands move together. Now this frame is at an even playing field because this joystick works very smoothly and easily and nicely. If we had problems moving this joystick back and forth, we would know that's a telltale sign that something's not level up here. To use the joystick, you want to get one hand down here again and one hand up here, and you use your hands to work together. It takes a little bit of practice. Once you get the hang of it, it's actually not too bad. I'm actually right-handed, and I'm actually using my left hand to set this job up. You can see how fast and easy I set it up. You want to look directly down over your print and register the image completely to itself. This image particularly is easy because we're actually registering the film to itself. Then we want to push the image down to ensure our registration is spot on. We need to make a small adjustment there. I love the joystick because it can move diagonally, up and down, side to side, any direction we want. Once we're set up, I'm going to hold the screen down so it ensures it does not move as we tighten the joystick back up, and then I'm going to simply tighten the joystick back up. Once the joystick's tightened, we are locked into registration. You want to go around your press one more time to make sure all your knobs are locked down. Your joystick knobs, your screen clamp knobs, and your palette knobs are all very important to tighten down, because if any one of those moves during the printing process, we're out of registration. We have to set the whole thing up over again. Plate 1 set up, ready to go. Next, plate 2, which is our black text. Now, because we used our pre-registration board to line this up, we pretty much don't have to line everything back up, measure the palette and all that again. That's already been done on the first screen. That's why it's so important to get your screen imaged in the correct area every single time. Let's lock the screen down. We want to make sure that our joystick is squared up and in the center. Once our screen's locked down, then we'll move to set the off contact. Once our off contact is set, we'll simply do the same thing with this screen. Remember, one hand down here. I like to rest my wrist on the knob to give my wrist some tension, and then one hand up here at the top. A couple small adjustments to get this into alignment. Check our registration marks. Make sure everything's in order. Make sure our image aligns in the center here as well. We need to make one small adjustment over. And once we're lined up, we lock down, hold it in place, and then on to the last and final color. Sure everything's locked down. Now to our white plate. Load our screen in, center our joystick out, check for off contact. This off contact needs to come up a little bit. Let's quickly do that. We've ensured a consistent off contact. Now we have a free range moving joystick. Can move at a diagonal level, move any direction. Simply line our print up. Now this particular image this white underbase is choked a little bit, so it should be slightly smaller than our completely surrounding red image which we're registering to. So as we push the image down, we should see a little bit of black outline around our whole image. We should not see any white spaces around each registration mark. We're ready and locked up. Look how fast and easy that was. Lock her up and ready to go. Make sure everything's tightened down. Now I'm going to keep my registration template on press just in case we have to go back and register something else. I'm going to move to the next station. Now you do need to make sure that your stations are the same distance, and since we had to move the station, we want to measure this. This comes out to be about just under 17 there. Move this station into place. Tighten the side knob first, bottom knob second, and do that to each corresponding station. That way your print placement on each station stays consistent. We have our white underbase, black, and then red outline. The way this is going to be printed is white, flash, print, and then print wet on wet. We can print these two wet on wet because the colors do not touch, so we only have one flash. Right now we have two choices to set this print up. We can either leave the registration marks open and print ink through them, flashing between each color, or we can close them up and tape them off already. I have good confidence this image is registered. In fact, I'm going to just check it one more time to ensure the registration on it is consistent. And then I'm going to go ahead and tape the registration marks up. Knowing that your image is registered means you can keep these open just in case you have to go back and register them later on when you don't have the films handy. Tape them up, simply take some screen tape. I like using screen tape versus Scotch tape because it's a little more solvent resistant. And we'll just tape our top marks off and our bottom marks off in one fell swoop. We've now taped our screen registration marks off and inserted squeegees in the screen, so it's now time to ink our screens. When you ink your screen, here let me move so you can see a little bit more. We're going to be using an opaque red. You want to insert, a fair amount of ink below your image area, right in front of your squeegee, as we discussed earlier. It's definitely enough to get us started. Keep that in the ink. We got our black. Now the black is printed through a 156 mesh screen. The other two screens are both 110 mesh. The black is through a little bit higher mesh screen because the black is a much thinner ink. If we put it through a low mesh screen, it's just going to flood directly onto our white underbase and it's not going to come out crisp looking at all, which is not what we want. So 156 or 200 would be good optimal screens for black on a general basis. For this print, we're going to be opting to go with a 156 mesh screen. Finally, our white. If you notice, I'm using metal spatulas. I like these clean very easily. This is the Ryonet white. It's very nice and creamy, easy to work with, but opaque. Because this test print incurs a flash, we don't want to use a test pellet for the most part. We're going to use a junk t-shirt. So this is a shirt that has previous prints on it. We're going on a black shirt here. Spray our spray adhesive down. We've already rotated our flash dryer into position. T-shirt on the palette there. Then we'll do our white underbase first. We're going to do 2 passes just to make sure the screen's open and printable. Flood the screen first. Get the ink working through the mesh area. 2 passes here. Then we're going to run this underneath a flash dryer. Now because our film's on this palette still, we don't want to get that underneath the flash dryer, so we're going to run that quickly through or go the other direction. Flash dryer is really low, set up for production purposes on this press right now, so it does not take a lot to flash this. It's flashed already and good to go. Next we'll be doing the next 2 prints wet on wet, flood up. This is all polling, this particular print. Very good. And as we're setting this print up, we are going to flash dry just in case the red doesn't match up. The reason we're flash drying just in case the red doesn't match up is because if we print the screen wet on wet, the red will automatically, the black will be transferred to the screen, so we'll have to clean the whole entire screen off before we go and try to register the job again. So just to be on the safe side, even though we're pretty sure the job will register, we're going to flash dry between colors just on the registration purpose. Make sure that's dry, ready to go. And then our final color. This is an opaque red, so you can tell it's a little thicker. Do this twice as well. Our screens are releasing the ink good. And there we have it. Now on our final print, we're actually going to be wanting to do the print with 2 white passes because we want that white to be an opaque background. But for our registration purposes, we're good, ready to go, and ready to start production. Our press is now registered, so we'll go ahead and take our film off, set it back in the carrying case for the film. We want to keep this in as good a condition as possible, so we're going to take the tape off of it right away. Now that our job is registered, we're ready to set up for production. When you're production printing on a rotary press, there's a few things that you want to check. First thing is you want to make sure that your pallets are all the same distance from the print station. So we're going to take our ruler here and we're going to measure each pallet accordingly. If they're not all the same, then we're going to want to move them. Right now this press seems to be set up so everything's lined up accordingly. Next, we're going to want to load shirts up. Now, we're not going to actually print this job in production, but we are going to load the rotary press and kind of show how the press works in rotary style. To load shirts up, obviously we're going to want to use our spray adhesive, tack down the pallet, and then we'll load all our 4 shirts up. Now because we're going to be printing white, then flashing, then printing wet on wet, the black is going to transfer on to the red screen. So we do want to run a couple test prints with the black transferring to the red screen so the black builds up on the red screen. If we don't do that, if we try to start a production immediately, what will happen is on the first couple shirts, the black won't be built up on the back of this screen, and it'll actually pull the black ink up off the print itself, and the black won't be as dark as a couple prints down the road. So that's why we want to always run a couple shirts wet on wet in production before we actually go to our full production run. So that's what we'll do first here, but we'll go ahead and load every shirt up. Spray a little more tack adhesive down there. When you're printing production, the loading and unloading of the shirt is very important. Now we've already measured our necklines to make sure that each shirt hits the same spot on the pallet, which is about 2.5 inches down for this particular print. A good way to tell that, if it's already not predetermined, is to put your t-shirt on, slide it all the way on, then pull it straight back. Then you can take your finger, hold it on the edge of the screen here, and then pull it down. Your finger, you can see your finger through the screen. You see it on the shirt. You measure 3 inches down. You have your approximate t-shirt spot, and then you want to neckline all your t-shirts like I've done. Obviously, we've wanted to let our flash dryer heat up for at least 15 minutes before we went and started printing. And then one more to go. Now this particular print will be a print, flash, print with the underbase, and then flash again. We're not going to be using an automatic flash for this. We are going to be using just a manual flash. So when we get to the testing phase and before we actually start production, we might need to manually rotate the flash back and forth. All right, I'm going to go ahead and rotate the flash dryer into position. And then let's start printing. When we print the white ink, we want a fairly up and down squeegee angle, probably about 80 degrees, and we want a good pressure to give us a nice print base. We don't have to press that hard. We do want the screen to release. We're going to go ahead and run each of our whites down first. Just one pass, because we are flashing. Now, we want to test our flash dryer to ensure that the amount of time underneath the flash dryer is going to be long enough to flash dry the shirt. This flash dryer is about 1 inch above the t-shirt. It's not quite long enough yet, so we're going to go ahead and count, probably manual count to about 12 to 15 seconds to ensure the flash drying is completed before we go ahead and print the next garment. You should be able to touch it. It should feel a little sticky, but nothing coming up on your fingers. So the first time around, we can take our time printing our white underbase because we do need to allow that to flash. Second pass of white now. This press has 2 cool down stations. It's important to let your print cool down before you go ahead and print again. If it's too hot, when it comes out underneath the flash dryer, you're sitting about 300 degrees. If you print ink on 300 degrees, it's going to cure in the screen. So that's why we have a 4-station press which has 2 cool down stations to allow it to cool down before we go to print the second pass. The things we could do to speed this process up would be a more powerful flash dryer. Right now we're using a 16 by 16, which is a standard flash dryer that comes in most kits, but we could go to an 1818 with more wattage, or maybe even an 1824. The higher wattage flash dryer you get, the faster you can flash, the quicker you can print. Okay, now it's time to lay the colors. So we're going to rotate our color screen over to the print position. Going to touch our white to make sure that it's cured so we can go ahead and print. Then we're going to flood the black to get the screen loaded up and then do a wet on wet print. I'll probably put a little more down the first time because we haven't transferred the black on to the red screen yet. Now when you tell the red screen doesn't have any black on it, so when I do this first print, it's going to pick up some black because our black is not flashed. Now our black lost a little color there. Next go around, this is why this is a test shirt, next go around, it's going to retain a little more color. So right now, because we're just setting the job up, I'm going to take the flash dryer from the flash position, rotate that back out. Now we don't want to print the black again without flash drying it. So for that shirt, because we don't want to ruin the t-shirt, we're going to go ahead and flash dry it and print the black one more time so we don't have to throw the t-shirt away. That'll give us a nice dark black before we go ahead and send it through the conveyor dryer. If we printed it without flashing, then we'd have a bunch of red transferring to the screen. We don't really need the red on our black screen. We're just going to have the black on the red screen. Now that the black is starting to build up on the red screen, it won't pick up as much. That kind of acts as a layer. As long as your screen stays registered, which with this registration bracket right here in this gate, the screen stays in very good registration from print to print to print. That's why it's important to have a good press that can hold registration, because that allows us to do wet on wet printing without having to worry about if our prints are lining up and smudging on the back of our screens. We'll go ahead and hit the black one more time. Then we'll hit the red one more time to continue to build up the black on the red screen. Now pulled off a lot less black that time. This t-shirt is done. We'll send it through the conveyor dryer. While we're letting that shirt cure, we'll go ahead and load another shirt. We've already rotated our flash out of position there. Have to worry about that burning. Now remember, we want to let that black build up a little more. So we'll probably just do one more print and just ensure it's built up enough on the back of that screen before we start the production run. We'll go ahead and hit the black. And then the red. See if enough black is built up on that red. And there we go. It looks good. It doesn't pull up all the black. And now let's test for curing. Remember, we're using this low rider conveyor dryer. So we're going to run it through the conveyor dryer, then we're going to grab our laser temp gun to ensure that it's reaching temp as it gets out of the belt. Here the shirt comes out. This is our laser temp gun. We're going to temp the surface of the t-shirt. Now right now that surface is coming out at 374 degrees. It's actually getting a little hot. We can speed the belt up or lower the temp of the dryer. We want the surface of the ink as it reaches out of the conveyor dryer, so we're going to point in about a foot in, if we can reach in that far, to be about 330, 340 degrees max. If it gets too hot, sometimes we can have burnout on the ink where the black ink, especially because it's a thinner ink, actually bubbles up and starts to burn out. Right now that didn't happen. We have a very nice final design, but we're just going to speed the belt up a little bit so that the t-shirt does not get too hot. Let's do one more print so we can test the belt speed one last time. While that's going through, we'll load one last shirt up. And then after that, once the belt speed's dialed in, we're ready to start production printing with this job. We're hitting 330, so we're perfect, ready to go. Now, as you notice, as this comes off the belt, we have a box for it to drop into. Especially on smaller dryers, you want to make sure that your shirts don't drop into a box very hot. They need to cool down a little bit before they go into the box. If they drop in hot, sometimes the ink on them is still sticky and the ink design will stick together, basically ruining the t-shirt. So you need to make sure you have enough cool down space on your dryer. This particular dryer has about 3.5 feet of cool down space, so with the low rider dryer you're completely fine. But keep in mind, on some of the smaller dryers, you don't want to run your belt too fast, because if the shirt drops in the box hot, it might ruin the t-shirt. Before we start here, we're going to make sure our screens have enough ink in them. The worst thing is getting into a flow of things, starting to print a lot of t-shirts and then running out of ink right away. So we're going to load the screen up with just a little bit more ink on each design to ensure that we won't run out during the print. Drop the screen into position. Just load a little more ink on here. Now that we're ready to put this print into production, we're actually going to have Don Garrison, who did the production section on the last DVD, come up and show you how it works.
Hi, I'm Don, and I'm going to put this 3-color print through production for you that Ryan's already discussed a little bit earlier. And just keep in mind at first to pay attention to your flash. And this is just a simple white, nice couple even pulls per coat, and just spin the press. Once the pallets get hot, we won't have to wait as long on the flash here. Which I might have to flash these twice till the pallets get warm. You can tap it with your finger like I did there, and I'm just doing nice easy pulls. Screen snaps right up. Yeah. And you'll notice I'm just spinning the press, letting the press do all the work. It clicks into place, the screens click into place. You don't have to baby the machine. Now I'm going to the 2 colors, wet on wet. And keep in mind you got your flash going over there. Right onto the belt. Shirt on. Another hit of white. And that was a little longer than 10 seconds, but with the flash set at the proper height, you don't have to, it won't have any effect on the shirt. And if you have to skip one, you can skip one and just move it around to the next pile if you think you've left it over there too long. And I spin back around so that by the time I get the shirt on the pallet, the screen you need is already right here. Once you get the pallets warm, you should be able to raise your flash up and go so that the flash is keeping up with you. Pallets are getting warm, so flash time will come down. Same consistent print angle and stroke on all colors, and especially when you're going over the white plate, you need to be consistent on the pressure of these so you're not flooding the ink through the screen and thus causing it to blur. And you notice I haven't sprayed for a while. There's plenty of spray on there. The pallets get hot, it gets stickier, and you start putting too much, it's harder to get the shirts on. And now we're down to our last 3 shirts, and with everything went very smoothly, very efficiently. The presses work very nice when you're for spinning. Once you get into full production mode and everything is running correctly, for a print such as this, you should, with the one flash, you should probably be able to get 40 or 50 an hour possibly. But there you have it. With the right press and the right equipment, you can get an excellent print.